Hey everybody, this is John. Welcome back to another video. In this tutorial, I'd like to walk through the Power Earnings Gap Screener. Let's jump right into it and go into the settings. There's a couple of different options we have as far as how we're going to search. We can specify a search range, and this represents the number of bars backwards in time to look for a Power Earnings Gap. For example, with this set to 5, it will look 5 bars into the past to see if there was a Power Earnings Gap. We can also specify the last bar only, and with this set, it will look only at the current price bar and see if a Power Earnings Gap occurred. An important clarification here is this will only find Power Earnings Gaps that occurred on that bar if the earnings were announced pre-market. So let's go ahead and leave this search range set to 5. You can also specify the minimum gap up that you're looking for. This is defaults to 10%. We can set a minimum volume percent change over the average, and the average is based on a 50-day average. We can specify a positive earning surprise as a requirement, and in this case we can set this to 10%. We can also require a closing range percentage. I have this set to 33, so we're going to look for the closing bar to be at least 33% off of the bottom. You can specify a gap up bar requirement. This defaults to no requirement, but if you like to have a visual gap up when you're looking for a Power Earnings Gap, you can choose this option here, or the option here on top, you can specify that only the open is above the prior day high. We'll leave both of those requirements off. We're going to go ahead and click the apply button. We'll turn on our Power Earnings Gap screener right there and hit the scan button. And you'll see we have 28 symbols that match that criteria. Let's go ahead and take a look at APP. And if we look at APP, here's our Power Earnings Gap. It occurred 5 days ago. It clearly closed near the top of the range. And we can also see, if we look at the earnings information, we have the positive earnings surprise meeting our criteria. So let's go back and make a change. I'm going to go back into settings and turn off this requirement for the closing range. And we're going to select all the items in the list, and I'll show you why we're doing that in just a minute. We're going to hit the scan button. And now you can see the additions to this list based on our changes will not be highlighted. So let's take a look at Celsius. And if we go over to Celsius, look at the closing range of this bar. And this didn't show up in the previous scan because we had a closing range requirement of 33%. And I just want to show you this example to point out that we can tighten the criteria, but when you do that, you might miss a different opportunity. As we can see here, despite the fact that it closed at the bottom of the range, it's been a very nice run up since that point in time. What I generally like to do with the settings is turn both of these options off and go through the results, and I look at each one of the charts to look at the price action that occurred from the day the Power Earnings Gap occurred. The last thing that I'd like to show you is this concept of earnings acceleration. So I currently have this set to 2 for EPS acceleration. And if I go up here and turn that option on, I'm going to hit the scan button. You can see we now have 11 symbols. So let's bring up the symbol right here, GCT. And if you look over here on the left, you can see we have 2 quarters of earnings acceleration. Here's our Power Earnings Gap over here on the right. So let's go back one more time and make sure we have sales acceleration enabled. We'll put 2 in there as well. We'll turn that on, we'll hit true, and we'll start a new scan. And we can see that our list went from 11 down to 6. So let's take a look at this symbol here, LASR. And you can see over here, we have 2 quarters of earnings acceleration and 2 quarters of sales acceleration. The last thing that I'd like to point out is, in addition to Power Earnings Gaps, you can just look for earnings and sales acceleration. So if we go ahead and turn off this option right here, and now we rerun our scan, and now you can see we have 65 symbols that have both earnings acceleration as well as sales acceleration. Let's go ahead and bring up this symbol right here, AEM. And if you look over here on the left, we can see here's our earnings acceleration and here's our sales acceleration. So let's change this up a little bit and go in and look just for sales acceleration. So let's go ahead and put in 4 quarters of sales acceleration, turn off our earnings acceleration option, and hit the scan button, and you'll see that we went from 65 symbols down to 6. So let's go ahead and bring up one of these symbols. Let's take a look at CALX. And we can see over here, this is our sales acceleration for 4 quarters. If we hover our mouse over here, we can see the sales values, and these are the percentages showing the acceleration. Here is a previous power earnings gap, and it's been a very nice run up since that point in time. So there's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of different things you can look for as it relates to power earnings gaps, as well as earnings and sales acceleration. I hope you found this helpful, and we'll see you in the next video.